Hello, this is a brief tutorial on investment appraisal methods, specifically the average rate of return and the net present value calculations. So, firstly, we're going to start with the average rate of return, which is also known as ARR. And basically, it is the total rate of return, so the total amount of money that you get from a project, divided by the expected lifetime of that investment, so how long you expect the project to last and then run for in the future. And it is expressed as a percentage of the initial investment cost. So basically it's there to show you the average payback, if you like, that you can get from an investment every year as a percentage. This is obviously useful as it can be compared to things like inflation rates to see whether it's worth making the investment in the first place, and also it gives you an idea of what the expected return will be every year. So obviously it's got a formula with it, and the formula is the total net return or surplus divided by the number of years divided by the initial cost of the project times by 100 to turn it into a percentage. The second one of our formulas that we're going to be looking at, or methods of investment appraisal that we'll be looking at, is the net present value. And this is the net return on an investment where all revenues and costs have been converted to their current value. And in order to do the conversion, we have to use what are called multipliers or discount rates. And that basically takes into account inflation and shows how much money effectively is devalued every year. So it uses a similar principle of multipliers as the discounted payback period, and if you have a textbook with you, the AQA A-level one is on page 93. There's table 6.4 that shows you very clearly the multipliers, but equally well, if you don't have one of those textbooks, this table here should show you the multipliers. So it depends what our rate of inflation is likely to be. If it's 2%, 5%, 7%, or indeed 10%, and we have multipliers for each one of those. And obviously year zero is when you first make the investment, so there is no discount in that year zero because that's when the initial investment is happening. Then in year one, obviously you'll reduce it slightly depending on which percentage value you use, and year 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And essentially for every year you just multiply what your net cash flow is for each one and multiply it by the value to get your net value for every given year. Obviously it is very important to choose the right discount rate when you make the initial investment appraisal. Now there's several ways to do this. Firstly, you can look on previous data. You can look at things like the World Bank, look at inflation rates nationally and indeed globally to see what you think the data is likely to be. A good source of information: the World Bank and national banks all make projections about how much economies are going to grow or shrink, and for my class we use this question: how can the companies use these projections for investment appraisal? And essentially it's a way of seeing the investment appraisal and looking at how much these are likely to increase, and you then use that and apply that to your investment appraisal. So if the World Bank is saying we think global economies are going to increase by 2%, then your discount rate, you're probably going to pick something between 2 and 5% depending on how realistic you think their appraisals are. And you do the same with national banks. It's also quite useful with their projections because you can also compare your average rate of return indeed with the projections and the values that they've got to see whether you think the investment appraisal is worthwhile or not.